Hi and welcome to CoBB. We know this isn't normally what you hear at the top of any episode of ours so far, but this one is special. We're coming up on our 50th episode, and Sudeep and I really want to thank you for listening, for the comments you've sent, for the feedback you've given us, and especially for the suggestions of the topics you've made, because that's where we sometimes struggle because we don't know what to talk about, and we've leaned on you to tell us what you want to listen, and that's helped us a big deal. And going forward, we'd love to organize this a little better.
So, guys, the idea is to try and get to know you and your preferences better. And to facilitate that, we'll be putting a form in the show notes as well as in the comments wherever you're listening this podcast from. We request you to share something about yourself as well as some of your preferences and feedback for the show, and that will help us customize the content and make it even more useful for you. Looking forward for this small help from your end and hoping to provide you content that you will continue to love and continue to listen. Thank you very much.
Welcome to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharan Raghavan.
So, Sharan, I have observed that typically in a company, marketeers tend to have slightly longer careers as compared to a number of salespeople.
Is that true?
Yeah, of course, you will find long term, long enduring sales guys in various companies. But if you just look at an average tenure of a sales guy, and you look
Ah,
at average tenure of a marketer,
okay.
I found too often that the attrition and the turnaround in sales is much higher, and
Oh,
marketers tend to have a longer career.
okay.
Yeah,
Is that because they don't have monthly targets or something?
possibly part of the reason. But honestly, my articulation is that in marketing, it is difficult to get found out. You can't spot marketing idiots very easily.
Okay. Where are we headed with this now?
So, in sales as well as in marketing,
Hmm.
whenever we get into our careers, we tend to be lone warriors. Sales, especially because you are in some state, some region out there trying to fight your own battles, you have your team besides you.
Right.
uh, and sometimes in marketing also we make it like that. And in these pursuit, too often we tend to fall into mediocrity, or as Mr. Guy Kiyosaki says, Bozocity. Yeah. And the bozos in sales get found out very soon, uh,
Because of the
because
numbers.
because of the numbers, because they are not able to show the numbers, they are not able to explain the performance, they are not able to put any growth levers under it.
Right.
It just uh, takes significantly longer to find out a bozo in marketing. And hence, I think that is why I've titled our discussion for today as Surviving the Bozocity.
Okay. Surviving the bozos.
Yeah, surviving. So for example, we've all seen movies where there are zombies all around, and then you have to survive the zombies, right? You
Okay.
don't want to become a zombie. Similarly, this one is for marketers: how to avoid becoming a bozo.
Yes, sir. We're good.
Okay, excellent. So the idea is that all the marketers out there who are listening to this podcast, how can they gain from some of our experience to initiate, do things early in their career so that they don't fall into my definition of marketing bozos.
So when you say bozos, no, Sudeep, are you
Yeah.
talking about a collective thinking that happens within the company and a marketer towing the line and fitting into that collective thinking?
No, I actually mean that a marketing bozo would be somebody who is possibly chugging along, extending whatever little bit support that is anyways happening in the company, and
Hmm.
not honestly taking the charge of their brand and
Hmm.
taking it any definitive direction.
Right. Just going
Yeah,
with the flow and not creating any impact of their own.
correct. And so
Got
therefore
it.
you might survive with that for a couple of years or more, but you will get found out once somebody wakes up and asks you for a specific direction or a specific point of view or a specific action. It'll take
Right.
longer, but and by that time you would have already become a bozo.
Fair
Yeah.
enough.
Okay. So therefore, the idea is to help marketers survive the Bozocity, and on that pursuit, therefore, let's start from the first principles.
Okay.
A lot of the for a lot of people, marketing is their either the first role or the second or the third role,
Hmm.
and usually you have not done anything like that before you get into that role.
Right. You basically have a bit of a gap from your MBA, and then you spend time in sales, what, say 3 to 4 years maybe, and then land up in marketing with no real first-hand experience.
Correct. And too often, Sharon, what is romanticized in the society and in our jobs is the busyness of a person.
True. Very true.
The more busy you look, the more harried you look.
The more hardworking you're perceived.
Correct. People tend to think that you are more productive.
Right.
Yeah. And in sales also, the more the push you are doing, the more follow-ups you are doing with your team as well as with everybody else, tends to produce incremental results.
Right.
Yeah. So therefore, the belief gets reinforced that if I'm busy, I'm doing good.
True.
Yeah. However, the first thing that I would want to tell all marketers that when you get into a marketing role, this thinking will completely turn on its head, especially when you're starting off.
Okay.
Yeah. Suddenly, you will find yourself in a job which has slightly longer horizons, a lot of unstructured work, a lot of the work where the brief is even not known very well.
Hmm.
Nobody is measuring you every week, every month against a certain target. Yeah. And so therefore you will tend to think that you are in a thinking and an activity lull. Nothing is happening.
But don't marketers also have not necessarily monthly targets, but they do have an annual target which they're tracking to, right?
Yeah, of course. So we track monthly targets also. We get
Hmm.
impacted by monthly targets also, but that's a peripheral part of the role. That's the
Hmm.
final deliverable maybe.
Right.
But there's a lot of stuff that goes on between the time you think you have started influencing the targets. Yeah.
Fair.
Or versus
Got it.
just being a recipient of the target and the performance.
Right.
Yeah. So therefore, think of company and the brand as a train.
Hmm.
Yeah. For a significant part of your initial career, you will be a passenger on the train.
Hmm.
You might think that you're moving along with the train. You might also think that you're contributing, but till the time you're not an engine, I have news for you. You're not contributing. And if you continue for too long, somebody else will be the engine and you will be a bozo.
Hmm.
Yeah. So therefore, initially as we get into those roles, we want to find immediate activity, we want to look busy, and hence what seems intuitive is one of the two things.
Hmm.
One, you start looking at your sales numbers every day. Yeah, a lot of the people when they move from sales to marketing, that is where they draw their comfort from.
Right.
And then you start talking to the field, you start talking to logistics to make sure that depots have sufficient stock and all of that. Yeah. Or your import teams, and you want to create a difference. Or the second side is when you pick up one of the current projects,
Hmm.
anything which was handed over to you, and you start following up with your cross functional team.
Hmm.
That's how, those are the two easier ways of looking busy,
Ah.
becoming busy, feeling busy, and therefore feeling productive.
Right.
Yeah. Good, but not sufficient. Right. So
Okay.
therefore, what should you be busy with then? I'm
Hmm.
not asking everybody to kick back their shoes, put their feet up on the desk and just sit around.
Right.
The
So when a
question is,
marketer comes in, what are they supposed to be doing?
yeah. So therefore, One of the key things, and we have spoken about this in the past, we have said that the core job of a marketer is to represent the consumer and their thinking within the company.
Right.
And hence, before you even get to that stage, you are supposed to develop what we call as almost a telepathic empathy
Hmm.
with the consumer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we defined it in one of our previous episodes where we said that telepathic empathy is where you are able to almost predict on behalf of your consumer as to how
Hmm.
will they act, how will they make a decision, what will they do, etc., etc.
Hmm.
And to be able to do that, you need to know your consumer very well. You need to meet your consumers, and you need to interact with them sufficient number of times so that you start understanding them better.
So you need to get out of the office and just go visit consumers.
Visit consumers, and when you visit consumers, have some kind of a have completely open mind, like we said in one of our previous episodes, that be prepared to sound dumb,
Hmm.
start from first principles. Yeah, and every
Right.
time when you are going towards the end of your interaction, have one or the other hypothesis that you want to check.
Hmm.
Yeah, see what is it that your understanding has started to become about your consumer, get a reconfirmation
Hmm.
whether your understanding is correct or not.
Right.
Yeah, so therefore I assume that once you start meeting consumers, you would start making some hypotheses, some structures in your head, etc., etc. I would not still call it a conviction.
Right.
Yeah, the reason I stress upon this word is because we've said this in the past. The only job of a marketer is to sell conviction.
Right.
You might not still be able to create conviction or make convictions in your head, but you will be able to build a point of view.
True.
Yeah.
You
So the
might
first
not
step,
be. You might not be believe in it strong enough to pass it on to to others, but you would have start building your gut for it.
yeah, and to build a conviction, you need to empathize with consumer at multiple levels.
Hmm.
In point of view, you can have, you can have your thinking straight about one or two specific uh, points about the consumer. For
Right.
example, you might have a point of view about your point of sale material because you
Hmm.
have now started understanding how your consumer shops.
Hmm.
Where do they
Right.
go? What do they first look at? What are the key things that they think about before they make a choice, etc., etc.
Hmm.
Yeah. So therefore, you might have a point of view about that, but to build a conviction, you need a bird's eye view of consumers' life, their fear, motivations, their attitudes, behaviors, etc., etc.
Right.
Yeah. So therefore, the first thing that you should be busy about is getting out of the office, meeting the consumer, building a
Right.
point of view.
Got it. But I have a question.
Yep.
Now, when the the marketer comes from sales into marketing, and they are, yes, they can be busy with a lot of the peripheral stuff, and they can spend time getting to know the consumer. But you said they've got to start making an impact. Now, I have seen it. I'm sure you have too. When you start your marketing career, you don't have the the luxury or even the ability or the authority to make the changes you want made in the system. So where does this marketer start making this impact and making these changes?
Yeah.
It's good to have a
Good.
consumer perspective. What do I do with it?
Great question. And I think a lot of the people who are listening to us would also be thinking on the same lines, which brings me to my second point.
Hmm.
So, my first point was about first being ready to start making an impact,
Right.
which is about being busy in the right places, in the right forums.
Hmm.
Yeah. Second is to start with, you will want to change the small things.
Okay.
Yeah. So, your impact would be visible in small things. For example, I gave you an example of point of sale material. So you might
Okay.
have a point of view about what is the kind of handler, dispenser, box, stock unit, etc., that you want at a particular outlet, and you will be able to build your consumer understanding into it. That this is what I think about what the consumer wants,
Right.
what he or she looks for, and therefore this is how we should do it.
Hmm.
Yeah. So therefore, when you start doing that, not only does it create conviction in your head, but it also starts sending a message to rest of the people in the organization that this person has started understanding his or her consumer,
Hmm.
and you are now positively impacting or moving some aspects of your brand such that they become more amenable to your consumers.
Right.
First, being busy in building POV, and then trying to make small changes. This is a recursive or an iterative process.
Right.
Build POV, make small change, build POV, make small change, etc., etc. You keep doing it, and only when you keep doing it, you will be able to master the art of building a POV and then putting it to use.
So when you say make changes, is this the time a marketer is allowed to make mistakes on their own and learn from
Yeah,
them?
yeah, of course. So, and in fact, these are things which are not as high stakes, for example, as an advertising campaign. But to build conviction within yourself as well as within the system, these are the kind of things that you can work on. If you're a product manager, you would start possibly interacting with your software team or your developer team, and you will start impacting some amount of features which you think will take UX in the positive direction.
Right.
You might still not be ready to completely redesign, refurbish your entire website or your
Hmm.
landing page, but you will start making those small changes. And then you will look at data, you will look at consumer feedback, and you will either feel vindicated, or you will feel that you've learned something, your understanding has become more nuanced, or it has become better.
It's amazing, and it's kind of established the fact that why you're a marketing leader. You didn't call that a mistake.
Hmm.
You called it vindication or a learning opportunity, which is, I mean, which is pretty much the right way to put it. But very few of us do that, right?
Thank you for listening to CoB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharvana Raghavan. Subscribe and learn more at cobcast.net. That's CoBBCAST.net.
So therefore, to avoid being a bozo while you are trying to move some of your logistical work tracks ahead, it is very, very critical to center a lot of your time and work around consumers, building
Hmm.
POV, and then start making small changes.
Got it. So
Yeah.
small changes are fine, Sudeep. But as a marketer, I've got career ambitions, right? And I've come here out of passion. I want to make the life changing or brand landscape changing decisions and start influencing them. So let me push you to the next one. In Bozocity, how do I survive it not just with small changes, but how do I progress into making the bigger or even influencing the bigger decisions? Is there a transition phase?
Excellent. So now we are transitioning from surviving to thriving.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Thriving in Bozocity.
Yeah. So now you're thriving. Not only have you successfully avoided being a bozo, but you have now set yourself up to thrive.
Right.
But you've only set yourself up,
Okay, you are
right?
not started thriving yet.
You've not started thriving yet. So now the first thing, the third point, aiming for the bigger ones,
Hmm.
bigger changes.
Hmm.
Like you
Okay.
said, that I want to be a marketer who contributes positively to the brand, make a difference to consumers' life,
Hmm.
create an impact, and therefore build a career for myself. That kind of an ambition
Hmm.
is needed.
Hmm.
Yeah, I have seen marketers in the past who don't even have that ambition. They just want to survive throughout their careers.
And is that okay?
Might be okay for some of them, but I would honestly not want to be around that tribe at all.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Because they're
uh,
not growth seekers.
they are bozos.
Oh, they are the bozos who make up
Yes,
Bozocity.
correct. They
Okay.
have succumbed to Bozocity, unfortunately, and if you become like them, you know who you are.
Right.
Yeah. So therefore, aiming for the bigger ones, aiming to create that difference, etc., is something which will push you to the next level,
Hmm.
where again, the root to all of this is building better understanding of the consumer. So you would now start building a little more flesh around some of the skeletal understanding that you've built about the consumer,
Right.
and thereby you should be able to create what we call as consumer portrait or consumer persona.
Hmm.
Yeah, you should be able to, for example, give them a name and describe them almost to say that this is how they look, this is how they feel, this is what they feel about things, these are the activities that they do, and this is how they make their decisions.
An avatar of the consumer themselves.
Almost, yeah. For example, uh, if you were to play God, you should be able to recreate a typical consumer type or typical
Hmm.
consumer types if you have
Right.
many. Yeah,
Okay, it's the typical and not the ideal.
not the idea.
Okay. And could you explain the difference there?
Yeah, excellent. That was a brilliant point, Sharan. I think too often when we start thinking ideal, then you want somebody who is almost crazy about your brand, who is almost thinking your about your category all the time,
The
and
loyalists.
loyalist who are making decisions as you would want them to.
Exactly. Hmm.
Yeah, which I think is a mistake. Understanding the typical consumer is very critical, because again we have said this in the past that your brand is your center of your universe, but for the consumer it is just a speck in their universe.
In the spec and the periphery. It's not even
Yeah, yeah,
in
not
the,
at the center, of course.
yeah. It's
Yeah,
so
and
off.
sometimes not even a noticeable speck. Yeah.
Right.
So with all humility, you have to make what is called a typical consumer portrait, not an ideal consumer portrait.
Hmm.
Yeah. When you start developing that kind of an understanding, then you start forming what I call as conviction.
Hmm.
So what you formed earlier was POV, point of view.
Right.
What you've now started forming is conviction, because now you have started understanding in a 360, starting understanding the consumer in a 360-degree manner.
Right. So you've started substantiating your hypothesis with facts and actual consumer interactions.
Correct. So that's the time where you're aiming for big things and you're preparing for big things. So this is where you've started thriving.
Right.
Yeah. And then when you're starting to aim, that is where the marketing flywheel kicks in,
Hmm.
where
Hmm.
we said that now you've formed your conviction, and second stage was you start convincing people around you,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
Now, previously when we spoke about it, we spoke about it as a principle. Today we
Right.
are speaking about activities.
Okay.
Yeah,
Explain the
today's
difference, please.
so principle is that, like I said, forming conviction within yourself, convincing people around you, and convincing the world.
Right.
So those were the principles. I said that is how a marketer defines themselves.
Right.
Today we are talking about actual activities and behaviors
Hmm.
which the marketer should go through to survive the Bozocity.
Okay.
Yeah,
Is this where we go back to one of our earlier episodes where you said different ways of transferring conviction, starting with the leaders right down to the field force? Is that what
yeah,
you're talking about? Is the activity here?
yeah. So
Okay.
the content of the activity will be about choosing which audience you're talking to, and what is the content of that talk.
Hmm.
When you talk to leaders, you talk principles.
Hmm.
Yeah, when you talk to sales team or the team in the front, you talk to them about specific use cases or specific examples, right, or
Right.
deliverables. Yeah,
Right. I think we're going
uh,
to link that episode here in
we
the show
should.
notes because that gives a proper transition of what kind of conviction is required at every level.
Correct.
Awesome. Okay.
In this one, I'm just trying to build one more point to say
Hmm.
that when you've started transferring conviction, when you're talking to people,
Hmm.
it is very critical that we seek feedback.
Hmm.
Every feedback that you seek tends to either vindicate what you're saying or gives you a minor adjustment that you need to make to either your understanding or to your articulation.
Okay. But let me just pause you there a bit. I have come into marketing. I have spent time understanding the consumer, building a hypothesis, in after which I've proven my hypothesis and built conviction, right? Shouldn't I be the authority in this space? Why do I seek feedback from anybody other than the consumer? Why is that important?
Because finally you are hypothesizing on behalf of the consumer. You can never be an authority. Yeah.
Okay.
So therefore, when you're talking to people now, a lot of people say marketing is common sense. It is actually
Most of the
uh,
time, yes.
most of the time. So therefore, but you have built a method of trying to assimilate as much common sense as possible into your work.
Hmm.
Yeah. Otherwise, if you act only by common sense, it is almost gut. Yeah.
True.
As a marketer, you're trying to put some process around it, and
Mm.
hence, you've gone through that process. You've tried to assimilate a lot of common sense. But whenever you're interacting people in your team, many of them will come back with some more nuggets of common sense that you possibly either missed, or you overthought about them and possibly rejected them, or you
Mm.
overlooked them. Yeah. And
Right.
therefore all of those deserve some amount of consideration, and then careful rejection or careful folding in.
Okay. So you
Yeah.
lean on your stakeholders for this, or agencies? Where do you get the
Everybody.
feedback from? Okay.
Everybody. So this step is what I call, while it is transferring conviction, I also called it crowdsourcing wisdom.
Ah. Okay.
Yeah. So therefore you build some wisdom, you build some conviction. Then when you talk to people, you're talking to people so that you are able to sharpen your articulation to its most
Mm.
effective manner.
Right.
Yeah. Not only would people tell you something about your consumers, quite a bit of instances would be around the fact that you will get feedback on your articulation.
Yeah. Because their objections help you fine tune the words you use to convey the conviction.
Correct. Because
True.
you will get that people are possibly not understanding it in the same manner that you intended,
Right.
and hence your understanding might be right, but your communication, your articulation might not be right.
Mm. Makes
Yeah.
perfect sense. Yes.
So therefore this is the fourth step. So your first
Okay.
one was knowing your consumer, building a POV. Second one was changing small things. Number third was aiming for bigger ones where you build your conviction.
Right.
And fourth one is crowdsourcing wisdom when you
Okay.
start
Now,
transferring
uh,
conviction.
got it. But I get how I can be a good marketer with this, right? That by things I do. How do I blow the lid of the top? How do I go beyond as a marketer? Now I'm
So,
listening to people, I'm
hmm,
crowdsourcing wisdom. Now,
hmm.
how do I become the wise guy within the system? Because I that's what gets me promoted, right? What can I do?
No, I think you're already the wise guy now if you're doing all of these four,
Okay.
three, four things at the start of your career. I never did. Yeah. So therefore, if you're
I'm
already
still
doing
learning
this,
that.
so if you're still doing that, you are the wise guy. Now the fact
Okay.
is that in step number 3, when you're building your conviction, you want to
Hmm.
aim for the big things, right?
Right.
Now when you start thriving, this is where you take the game to the next level,
Okay.
where the advice is that once you start at that, when you start reaching that level where you've started building conviction, you've started convincing people around you also. Now how high you think, how high you aim,
Hmm.
will determine what is the kind of impact you are able to create within the company and on the consumers.
Okay. Explain that, please.
Yeah. For example, when we were working on Cadbury Dairy Milk, the idea was to appropriate the meetha occasions within a Indian household.
Right.
Yeah. So therefore, the team was brave enough to enumerate all the occasions and go after them one by one.
Hmm.
Yeah. And they were thinking high. They were believing that they'll be able to appropriate a number of these occasions by influencing consumer thinking, by creating various interventions,
This
advertising
is the
intervention.
so this would be the Kuch Meeta Ho Jaye campaign and the Meetas
The,
campaigns,
yeah, yes, the Kuch Meetha Ho Jaye campaign has run for decades now.
right?
Yeah.
Oh,
And
has it
it
been
took,
that long?
yeah,
Wow.
quite a bit. So it has taken them a lot of things. For example, when we wanted to appropriate the post dinner meetha occasion, which is rounding off a square meal,
Mm-hmm.
so that is when we had started very early with Cadbury desserts.
Right.
मीठे में क्या है, yeah, मीठा है कुछ तो मीठा मीठा है. And
Hmm.
then uh, you know over a period of time, trying to trigger this habit in consumers to keep a chocolate in their refrigerator, by getting into in-home packs, and then an advertising with Wahida Rahman was created.
Right.
Yeah. So Cadbury has been at it, the team has been at it to try and appropriate occasions by giving consumers sufficient number of nudges,
Hmm.
sometime communication nudges, sometime packaging nudges, nudges on the point of sale material,
Right.
right? because they believed.
Hmm.
Yeah. uh, Pehli Tarikh was another execution of similar kind, because at that
Right.
point in time we believed that that's an occasion when father comes with their salary and they get a
Celebrating
lot
the
of stuff.
payday.
Yeah, the payday. Then there were moments of small, seemingly small occasions to us,
Hmm.
but for that person they are big, right? Like the bus stop one.
Right.
Yeah. So so therefore you will see that the team was being brave enough to say that we will appropriate this occasion. So just the act that you dreamt and then you
Hmm.
went for it
Hmm.
will make sure that you will keep taking moonshots
Hmm.
and thereby aiming for greatness.
Okay.
Yeah, but taking moonshots is very, very critical. Now, if 5 star for a fairly long period of time was all about the product,
Right.
that it is such an engaging eat that you completely lose yourself, etc., etc. And now after that, the even within that the team was taking moonshots, and now they have taken it to the next level,
Right.
which is
Eat
about
5 star, do
nothingness.
nothing.
Yeah, the whole space of nothingness, and therefore taking moonshots with it, that what could nothingness mean
Okay.
meaningfully to
Yeah.
consumers of theirs, is something that they're aiming for.
Right. So I get the moonshot bit. Okay. But I have a
Hmm.
question that a lot of consultants, not me, but other consultants use.
Hmm.
Take a moonshot that is so far out
Hmm.
that you never held accountable for it. Like you said, that marketers can have a long career by
Ah,
setting the target so far away that they have to survive until the target is met.
correct.
So,
No, I
as a
think
marketing leader, how do you differentiate between these two?
see, that is uh, also a factor of how your brand, your company are placed.
Okay.
Yeah, and what is the kind of success and your revenue growth, etc., your brand is currently seeing. For example, you're a startup,
Hmm.
you're just launching.
Hmm.
Because you're just launching, you need to be able to create some amount of revenue for yourself. Yeah, so therefore your first objective will be to find a PMF, product market fit.
Right.
So you will try some of these things and you will make sure that you are able to get some kind of a revenue from a certain cohort, and
Hmm.
hence you know that your proposition, your product, your price, and your promotion is working,
Hmm.
right? So
Right.
therefore the stage of the brand and the stage of the company also determine
Hmm.
what is the kind of moonshot that you're going for.
Got it.
Yeah. Similarly, if you're a brand, you're already a category leader, you're chugging along at a 20% CAGR, you're part of an FMCG, you're already a whatever 500,000 crore brand,
Hmm.
then the kind of moonshots that you can take is very different.
Right.
Yeah. But I would urge all marketers at any stage of their career, within a startup or in an established company or working on a small brand, large brand, etc., etc., to take moonshots which can be afforded by their brand and their company at that stage.
Hmm.
Yeah, only if you do that will you be able to aim for excellence. Excellence doesn't come from safe work.
Okay.
Excellence always comes from moonshots.
So
Yeah.
thriving in Bozocity comes with its own risks.
Yeah, so marketer's job is to take risk. That's the only thing that we do. We push the brand into a slightly more unknown territory because we think that the consumer would like it, because we are
Hmm.
hypothesizing on the behalf of consumer, but
Right.
nobody else in the company has possibly thought in that direction.
Hmm.
That's why too often marketing is termed as the headlight of the company. You're trying to peer into the darkness and trying to therefore show the direction. There
Right.
is obviously the steering, the four wheels, and the engine that have to do the job, but somebody has to stare into the darkness and try to shine some light on it.
Ah.
Yeah. So therefore, that's the role that you're supposed to do if you're not a bozo. Yeah. So this is
Got
my
it.
fifth step, which is aiming for the stars, taking a moonshot. And if you're able to successfully do all of this again and again and again, because you might change brands, even on the
Hmm.
same brand you might reappraise your knowledge, your understanding about it. You want to continuously upgrade your knowledge, you will go through the same cycle over and over again.
Right. And I think that's a lovely analogy you put about shining the light, because as a marketer, when you start your career, when you get into marketing, you have a craving for the spotlight. But that's probably not where you grow. When you become the spotlight and start giving direction to the company is when actual growth begins as a marketer. I think
Correct.
that's a lovely analogy. So
Correct.
we spoke about people coming into marketing and looking busy. And instead of looking busy, what can they do to become better marketers or to even progress? Is to basically go out and meet consumers. I think we've said it, our guests on the show have said it, and I don't think this can be said enough that
Hmm.
just going out and meeting and talking to consumers is the best way for a marketer to start building conviction. And when you have a bit of conviction, when you have your hypothesis in place, start testing it by impacting small things in your brand. You might not have the authority or the credibility within the system to make the large moves, but make the small moves and win your favor, or win or establish your credibility by doing these small changes. And then transition into making the larger decisions by creating or being the champion of the typical customer avatar or the consumer avatar, and transferring your conviction to others. And be careful when you transfer this conviction, and be careful to listen to what others have to say and use their feedback to keep articulating it in a way that you're crowdsourcing wisdom, and not just from your internal stakeholders but also from your agency partners and everybody you talk to. And once you have done that and you become the wise guy in the system, take your moonshot. Do not be afraid to take risks. And when you've gone through the cycle of becoming a better marketer, I believe, I'm not sure if we said this, but the company also has the willingness to bet on your moonshots. And that is how you can progress as a marketer. And that's how you can build your activities as a marketer when you in your career. And that's how you thrive and not just survive in Bozo City.
Very well put. Very well put, Sharan. I couldn't have said it better.
Hmm. Brilliant. Thank you so much for this, Sudeep. Lovely one.
Thank you, Sharan.
Thank you for listening to CoB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharavana Raghavan. Subscribe and learn more at cobcast.net. That's CoBBcast.net.